Good evening, everyone. This is Sandy. Welcome to my slideshow on shared perception, a concept analysis. I think I'll jump right into the slides I sent you all to look at and interpret. Probably everyone interpreted this one and shared the perception that these still photos represent motion. In this one, I think when I first looked at this, I thought, oh no, this guy got hurt. He's bleeding. You know, maybe he's homeless. Maybe he's a gang member. But then I panned out on the picture just a little, and then I read about it. And what is actually happening is this is red paint. This guy is their friend. They're at a party. They're all laughing and playing, and you know he is laughing instead of crying or crying out for help. So maybe we didn't share the perception on this one because of lack of information. As a nurse, what do you believe about aging and the elderly? Having worked in nursing homes and in hospitals for many years, I think we do have a skewed view of the elderly. We see the elderly as, you know, they're old and sick. However, as Margaret Fitzgerald said, if we all worked at the golf course, we might have a totally different view about the elderly because only about 2% of elderly people dwell in nursing homes. But when I'm in the nursing homes, I swear I thought it was, you know, at least 95% of all old people lived in the nursing home, but not true. There are many, 90% or 80% live in the community and have healthy, very active lives. And I think this little lady is probably one good example of that. I'm not in my 70s and I can't do that. And elderly people are staying healthy and sexually active, well into their 80s and 90s. So again, a totally different perception than a nursing home nurse or a nursing home nurse practitioner might have about the elderly. And this is my model. I think the rest of you have probably seen that at least once. Shared perception hasn't really been studied in any depth by nursing. It has been studied pretty extensively in psychology, and shared meaning and shared cognition are used in corporate team building and in corporate organizational behavior. So some of these ideas come from the psychological literature and the philosophical, as well as corporate organizational literature. Perception or shared perception is a perception that's shared by two or more people. It can serve as a catalyst for change, which can lead to positive patient outcomes, which is what we want. That's our ultimate goal in our patient-nurse interactions and communications. The use of therapeutic techniques to elicit the patient's perception, if we can do that through some patient-centered communication, that's where we start with this formula or this model, if you will. The usefulness to nursing in theory, research, and practice. The perception is already a pretty fundamental component of several of the nursing theoretical frameworks like King, Roy, Oram, and the self-efficacy theory. It's there. Shared perception is not there, but perception is there. And I think I'd like to take that a step further. The antecedents of this model are knowledge, emotion, and experience. Knowledge includes both language and vocabulary. We all use words in our language. That's how we convey thoughts and emotions to others that we communicate with. Knowledge also is the ability to intellectually grasp concepts. As sort of a secondary antecedent to this, we assume that a person has a normally functioning intellect to work within this model. And remember that formal education is no assurance of knowledge or understanding of our teaching. And I think over the years we've probably all learned that, maybe the hard way. Experience includes cultural considerations, meanings of words, how that can vary, and I think we've talked about that before, how that can vary from discipline to discipline, from culture to culture, and even within our own discipline, from one area of expertise to the other. And experience also includes our memories. I remember talking in Dr. Robinson's class about music and experience, and how for a lot of people music can bring back good memories, but it can also bring back very poor, bad memories for others and can lead to trigger some PTSD. So just think about how the memories are attached to certain words and certain experiences, and how that can play into a shared perception or lack of a shared perception. Emotion is closely linked to learning. This comes out of a lot of the psychological and educational literature. A heightened emotion can actually be beneficial to learning, but beyond a certain point, when the emotion becomes extreme and stressful, it can be very detrimental. The five senses also play into the emotion as well as memory. Now, the three large components, knowledge, experience, and emotion, interact individually within the model. Knowledge and experience leads to content, learning content that can be later engaged upon, and actually a shared perception can be achieved. Experience and emotion combine for patient or nurse engagement, and emotion and knowledge provide the capacity for the learning. Some threats to this model are stress, confusion, and ambiguity, and either of these can occur on the part of the nurse or the part of the patient, and can really just pull that model apart and keep that intersect from happening where shared perception occurs. And in my model case, a patient, Mr. K, recently diagnosed with diabetes, comes in to see the nurse practitioner to discuss his diagnosis and his treatment plan. He does have some prior knowledge of the disease because he had an uncle who was diabetic. He also has an experience with the disease due to attending some diabetic education classes with his uncle when he was younger. And additionally, some very strong emotional attachments to this disease because his uncle had a foot amputated and went blind due to complications from diabetes. Mr. K does have the capacity to understand the disease. He's able to discuss the disease process and potential complications, and he's very engaged in the learning process. And I believe with him, the interaction of these components produces a shared perception, and then we can move on from there and do additional teaching. And my contrary case in this true story, a nurse asked a teenage patient if she's using birth control pills. Well, patient said, yeah, I take the pill. The nurse goes away assuming that the patient takes birth control pills every day as they're prescribed, only to find out later from the patient's sister, I believe, that this patient hoards her birth control pills and only takes them on the days that she knows she's got a date and is going to be sexually active. So when you look at the comparison between the diabetic case and this case, there is no shared perception about what taking birth control pills means. And in conclusion, shared perception is a basic goal of nurse-patient communication. It occurs when knowledge, experience, and emotion interact. This creates a mutual meaning or a shared meaning, and that can lead to shared ideas, shared goals, and positive patient outcomes. And it can be a very useful theory or a useful concept for nursing theory, research, and practice. I welcome your feedback and thank you very much.